It seems surreal, but it has been 6 months since COVID-19 first shuttered our church buildings and sent much of the U.S., and certainly those of us here in Oregon, into isolation. I can feel the time and distance wearing on me like sand in my shoes. And I know I'm not alone in that either. I am regularly fielding questions about when we will be reopening the church building from people that are eager to return, especially as some other churches in the area begin to reopen themselves. And I want to be back in person. I really do. I hunger for it. I am so tired of this. I am ready to put aside the extra work of making services digitally and meet in person again. I want to see all of you and I want to give hugs. I long for that. But therein lies the rub. My feelings don't change what is going on. And we don't want to rush into anything just because we are really tired of meeting in our own homes. Even though I am really tired of meeting in my own home in many ways. So I wanted to take a bit and talk frankly about what the situation for our community is and what we have planned to do about it. First, let's be clear. There is no such thing as risk-free. We cannot wait until there's zero risk involved in going to church because everything we do has some risk, from crossing the street to driving a car to eating a grape. So this isn't about eliminating all risk before reopening. It's about managing what risk there is so that it is at a reasonable level for what we get out of it. Okay? So first of all, how contagious is COVID? Well, it's about twice as contagious as the flu. But the main question is, what does it do in a church setting? Fortunately, there's a great test case in this. On March 10th, a Skagit County church in Washington held their choir practice, just like normal. This was a fairly large choir, just over 60 people there, and they practiced for about 2 hours. No one showed symptoms during the practice, but within weeks, 86% had contracted COVID from one person there. 2 people ended up dying, 3 others were hospitalized. So that is our baseline. Normal time of congregating, sharing food, and singing is about an 80% infection rate from a single person who has COVID-19 and is present. Okay. But of course, the question is whether getting COVID-19 is dangerous enough to warrant changing our lifestyle in the first place, right? Let alone canceling church. A lot of people are arguing that it isn't. Well, part of the problem is that the full extent of the damage is unknown because no one knows the long-term effects of this virus. We know that the mortality rate from COVID-19 right now in Marion County, for instance, is right about 1.7% of confirmed cases. But only the most severe cases get tested, so there's a big gap between actual cases and confirmed cases. Meaning, if you have the virus but it isn't bothering you and you don't get tested, you have an actual spreadable case of COVID, but you don't count towards the confirmed cases yet, and you might never. So from here on, it is a bit of guesswork, and we need to acknowledge that. But based on testing and infection rates on cruise ships, where everyone was tested, about 50% of cases are asymptomatic, but can still spread the virus. Most of those, and even many with mild symptoms, don't get tested. In fact, estimates are up to 90% of all COVID cases don't get confirmed ever. But of those which are confirmed, it is a 12% mortality rate for people over 65, and nearly a 20% rate for those over 85. The CDC, in fact, recently published that older adults are 100 to 630 times more at risk of death than young adults or children. Assuming a 10% confirmation rate and that none of the unconfirmed die, that means someone over 65 has a 1 in 100 chance of death if they catch COVID-19. However, the effects go farther than that. A recent study showed that just under half of survivors of COVID-19 developed some form of heart problems caused by scar tissue around their heart from the virus. And similar studies are being done that show long-term damage from the virus, even from minor cases, on a variety of organs, including the lungs. There's just a lot that we don't know. And let's be honest, I'm a pastor. I'm not a medical expert. I have done as much research as I possibly can on this, and I've talked with a great many people in and out of the church, but I am not a medical expert. But let's just work with what we do know for a moment. As of September 2nd, I know it's expired data, but it's when I crunch the numbers. Woodburn has a confirmed caseload of 298 cases per 10,000 people. If we assume 90% are not known, then the actual infection rate right now is about 1 in 4, almost guaranteeing infection in any larger group that sticks around for a continuous period of time, especially one without precautions. So if we open right now, the risk of death for our average parishioner is about 1 in 100. Obviously, that is not okay, and we want to take it seriously. Even if we ignored all presumptive cases and only went with confirmed cases, it is still about 1 in 30,000 chance of death if we open right now like normal. That is way too high. So when we return, we will be taking serious steps. There will be marked directions of travel so people don't have to try and pass each other in narrow hallways. We will have sanitizing stations and ask, of course, that everyone wears a mask and practices social distancing. There will also be changes to the service itself. Sadly, singing has been shown to be a prime spreader of the virus as people project their voices. So no singing for a while, because all of that little tiny droplets carry the virus. That's just been shown. Hopefully, these precautions will help to reduce the risk of spread. However, let's be honest, there is no magic precaution that prevents any possibility of spread. Health workers take all the precautions they can and still catch COVID. At best, I estimate we can reduce infection risk to a 5% chance instead of an 80% one if someone infected does come to service. Okay? That's pretty good. But that still causes a problem. Because there's up to a 2-week incubation period after infection when someone is infectious themselves, but they don't show symptoms yet, even if they later go on to have a very severe case. They have 2 weeks that they show nothing. So let's say one person walks into service and infects 5% of the people they come in contact with. Half of those people infected are married and over the next week infect their spouses too. Everyone comes back to service the next week, and no one is yet showing any signs of infection. Each of them now infects 5% more of the congregation, and suddenly we're back in the majority of the church has been infected in 2 weeks, even with the absolute best precautions that we can come up with. Because of this, we will initially be returning only every other week, or perhaps even once a month, to make sure that we don't double dip on infection, so to speak, because it is that second week which is so damaging. We want to make sure that if somebody does come to church and they are infected, that we limit how much spread they can do, and then we also limit how much the people that they infected have a chance to come back and infect others. So creating a gap in between those services is going to be one of the most crucial things we can do, unfortunately. But when will that first week be? Well, a while. Our denomination has restricted all churches in the Northwest from meeting inside their building, and that has to be relaxed before we can meet. Our local church has also set some guidelines. First, we want to be able to meet as a group. As an older congregation, we have about 20% of our congregation who live in retirement communities of some kind, and during this pandemic have often been unable to leave their community center. We want to make sure that any transition to in-person worship does not leave them out. Period. But all of this is background, and you probably came here for a magic number. So here it is. Once all other conditions are satisfied, the church leadership and the reopening committee have set as our goal that given the vulnerabilities of our population, we will not reopen for in-person service until the weekly new case count for Marion County is 10 new cases per week or below for a straight month. And of those 10 new cases a week, no more than 3 a week can be from Woodburn. Now, I know that sounds severe, and it is, but even those precautions only drops the odds of death for attending the service to about 1 in a million, which is about on par with our odds of dying in a long-term car accident. Still a risk, but a risk that we feel at that point is a manageable risk and one that is worth taking. I hope to see you then, and I pray that day comes soon. But if you have any questions before then, if you have any comments, concerns, if you question some of these numbers or want to get more in depth, feel free to drop me a line, email, call, comment down here in the video down below. And I'd be happy to chat with you and talk about it.